name is Salt and Fuss. I first met Harold back in the 80s when he was sailing with Joe Byers on the Eagle. And I don't know why Joe would call me back every week to see if I wanted to go sailing. I didn't think I was that good of a sailor. But after a while, I started to deliver boats with Harold. I found out he delivered boats all over the Caribbean. And Harold is known throughout Tampa Bay as a delivery boat captain. And
Okay.
what I found out about with Harold, he was a teaching captain. And as we were on the trips going to the Bahamas, what I noticed was there was always a narrative going. There were always stories. Harold was always telling us a story, which is really rich in history, which I've incorporated in. Maybe you'll see later in some of the stuff I've written. But Harold is always given me a lot of stuff on history. Like the story how he, when he first started sailing, he would take the canvas between his mom's bed springs and mattresses and use that for his sails. And I guess he got in trouble about that with his mom. If you want that. And then one good thing about sailing with Harold in Tampa Bay, he showed me where Captain Warner's boathouse is. It was right off the end of Bayshore on the south end. It was a captain, or a buoy tender captain, who would put kerosene in the lights. And then I enjoyed the stories about Harold sailing as a kid. When they would sink their boat, they finally figured out after a while they would tie a string in a milk bottle so they could find the boat later. And on a practical thing, I've seen Harold come up with a lot of ingenious ideas of how to fix our rigging. One of our main ingredients would have been duct tape, but we always seemed to get by with what we had, even though it might not have been the right thing. But a lot of times we improvise, which is Harold's one of his pluses, is be able to design on the go.
Hi, my name's Tom Mayers, and I'm proud to know Harold Balcom. I heard about Harold Balcom a lot before I really met him, and I knew him as a boat captain and Jack Eckerd's captain on the sailing yacht Panacea. And I just had heard stories about him, and then Clark Mills, who was a good friend of mine, always used to talk in glowing terms about Harold, and he was one of Clark's heroes. I mean, Clark never put it that way, but he always sort of, you know, when he was talking about racing sailboats or sailing sailboats, he always mentioned Harold as being one of the top captains in the area, one of the best sailors on Tampa Bay. And I had a stint as a race boat captain, and I always, you know, looked up to the other captains. And when I heard that you know, Harold had a car and had a nice job and used to take the boats from place to place, and then eventually I got, you know, a similar thing where I was getting paid to be a captain, and I knew some other captains, so we all sort of, you know, there were people that we looked up to, and Harold was one of those people. And the same as with Vince. One time I was sailing with Joe Byers. I sailed with him for about 15 years on and off, and he would invite me to races. And one time we had a race, and it wasn't really you know, terribly windy day, but it was blowing about 20 miles an hour, and we were in about a 10-foot sea off Egmont Channel. I guess it was Pass a Grill. And we had a nice race. It was beautiful. The water was clear, but the waves were about 10 feet. And, you know, I was told that this, you know, guy, Harold Balcom, who I had heard of and known, you know, over the years, was going to help me on the foredeck. And the next thing I know, you know, we're in this 10-foot sea, we're putting sails up and taking sails down, and Harold was right there, and he did everything about as well as you could do it. And, you know, I was just really impressed that in those conditions that anyone would be able to do well. And, you know, especially I think Harold at the time was about, I don't know, 75, 80 years old, and he did as well as anybody. So another story I have about Harold, and I bet he doesn't even remember this, was that you know, after the races, we used to go up to the bar and have a drink at the bar, and the boat was tied up, and so everybody was up at the bar having a drink after the race. And then the next thing you know, this squall came up, and it was pushing Eagle, the boat we were sailing on, right against the dock. And we ran out to see what we could do about Eagle, and Eagle was just, you know, pounding against the dock with about a maybe 40-mile-an-hour wind, you know, and it was just tied up just for the moment. You know, we were going to move her to another location, and there was a post off of the stern of Eagle that was sort of pivotal. If we could have gotten a line on that post, then everything was going to be okay. But in the meantime, you had about 3 men pushing as hard as they could to just keep Eagle from doing damage hitting against the dock. So we were there, and I had tried to throw a line a couple of times, and I wasn't able to do it. So I went back and helped push off the dock, and the next thing you know, here comes Harold Balcom, and he gets the line and throws it on the piling and secures it, and we tie Eagle off no problem. And I thought that was pretty good. So, you know, I'm going to just turn this over to Harold, and he's going to talk about sailing, and I hope that you enjoy this.
I'm Harold Balcom, born in Tampa, and I had 2 older brothers, and my dad used to sail years before up on the Great Lakes, and he left a book there about 1905 about sailing and had pictures of sailboats in it. Well, we lived near the bay, so when my brothers and I said, well, we got that book about, had pictures of sailboats in back there, and they were all gaff rigged. So we started building a little flat bottom rowboat out of pine, and we didn't even needed to know we needed galvanized nails. So we built a little flat bottom boat and put a gaff rig on it with a bamboo mast, and started sailing, and it was a lot of fun, but I didn't know anything about it. I remember we came about and it was all right, but when we jibed, that's turning around the other way, all of a sudden the shroud let go because we just had clothesline wire wrapped around. And then when you jibe, they put a little strain on it. The clothesline wire gave away, and the mast, the whole rig went over the side. So we learned things like that. So later on, there was a class of boat called in Hillsborough Bay, Tampa, called the 16-foot class, and the only rule was it couldn't be over 16 feet long. So all the guys would build their own boats, make their own sails, and we would bend boards around 16-foot boards, and they had pretty good class. You could carry all the sail you wanted, make it as wide or as narrow as anything. It just couldn't be over 16 foot long. But one of the boys wrote up the articles for the newspaper and bring them down to the Tampa Tribune, and so what they got an idea, these boats ended up 15.5 feet long. So we said, we take 2 18-foot boards and cut some off, and then we'll have a boat that's 16 feet long, and that'd be under the rule. Well, they did that, called the Hawk Second, but when they measured it, it was 16 feet 1 3/4 inches long. So one of the brothers that brought the thing down to the newspaper said the rules of the 16-foot class is no boat shall be over 16 feet 1 3/4 inches long. So right then I got the idea you ought to be on the race committee or some committee that has something to do with the rules. So that was kind of in learning experience. So I kept racing, and one time we won the 16-foot championship at Hillsborough Bay. I was about 14, 15 years old. And then I got a boat, and that already had been a centerboard boat. I put a keel on it, a little lead ballast, and we used to race from Tampa, start Tampa at midnight, raced down to Paso Grill, and the boat was called Novice, and I was successful with that boat. And so then just liked to play around boats. So we kept racing, and we used to go down, there was a big regatta every 4th of July at Paso Grill, the West Coast Fleet Championship. And boats would race from Tampa down, St. Pete down, Sarasota up, Bradenton, Clearwater down, Paso Grill. All the boats would be there for the 4th of July weekend, and I had good racing. And then that's where I learned to sail in a current, because in the current in Paso Grill Pass, pretty good swift current. There's a lot you can learn about sailing in a current. So then, that was during the Depression, and at the end of the race, they would have out on Shell Key, they call it Shell Island, used to be, they would have a bullet dinner. You could come out there, and anybody could get out there and get a free dinner with mullet. So it was really I've got a few pictures back then of that experience. Later on, I went down to Miami, and I was working down there, and I happened to see a boat, 32-foot Duchess was the name of it, from Tampa. I recognized the boat was sailing up the channel. So I went down, on Sunday would be off, I would go down along the river, Miami River, with a bunch of yachts there, and try to get a job on a yacht. And there was a nice schooner there. I went, I talked to the captain, and he said, "You see my crew here?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "They're all master mariners, and they have unlimited papers, and they're on here as a crew just for just as to get the food, to get fed." That's how tough it was during the Depression. So I said, "I don't think there's much chance of you at Greenhorn getting on this boat anyway." But across the river, I ran into the Duchess, which Harry Burgess I knew from Tampa, and he was on there, and two brothers from Braden, from Gainesville, and they had raced to Cuba from St. Pete, Havana race, came back up to Miami and wanted to go to the Bahamas. So I said, "Man, I'd like to do that." So I got with them, and the four of us, went out to the Bahamas. And I didn't know anything about the Bahamas. Before they had the Bahama Guide, all we had was the sailing directions of the West Indies, which were big ships. But we started out, the government cut there in Miami, and it was rough southeast wind, southeast wind, blowing about 15, 18, pretty good sea running. And all three of them got seasick within a half hour. So I was there on the wheel, and I didn't know where I was going, but we just kept tacking. I tacked all through the night, and the next morning I saw a little island over to the left, and I just kept sailing until I got in there, and found out. We went in and anchored, and found out it was Hawksbill Creek on Grand Bahama Island. So we went ashore there. And I've kept pictures of it, and at that place there was an underground river that we could lay on the edge and look down there and see all the different kind of snappers and different fish. And they said they could put a piece of wood in there and see it. It'd come out. They knew it went right through the island to the other side. And there was an underground river. Well, it's not there anymore because the developers came along and said if we cut this out and we could have waterfront property along right on this stream, which is narrow, and so they did that. So it's not there anymore.